Okay, let's just take a little short look at the Visual Basic, the idea of a collection. Now, if you haven't studied Visual Basic yet, I guess you just ignore this. Anyway, in general terms, a collection is an object used for grouping and managing related objects. For example, every form has a collection of controls. So remember, in Visual Basic you have a form and then you have all the controls. So you can so all of the controls are put together in what's called a collection. Remember, we also talked about arrays, or you might have seen arrays, but remember, one problem with arrays was that it was you couldn't change the size of an array very easily. But if you had an array list, that was called a dynamic array, or in other words, that you could change the size where you don't even have to worry about the size. It automatically changes. So an array list is also a collection, actually. So anyway, they say that here you have a collection of controls. They say you can access this collection through the form's controls property. So there's a property for the form. Remember what a property is, so you can give the name of the form and then dot controls. And then if you put in an index into that, or in other words, some numeric argument into it, you can access the different elements on the form. So if you put in like controls and then open bracket 1 closed bracket, that might be the first button on the form. And then if you do controls open bracket 2 closed bracket, that might be the second whatever object on the form, and so on. Remember, we used arrays, or you might in your class you might have used arrays, and you could loop through the elements in the array or an array list. Well, an array list is a collection, and in general it says it allows you to retrieve a control in the collection by its index and to loop through the elements of the collection using a loop, like for each next statement or something. So I just did a search for collections in visualbasic.net, and this is Microsoft's page, so you can go back and check that if you want to see more of it. Also, I recommend this page, although they don't seem to have anything about collections here, but called Home and Learn. So actually the web page is HOME and learn.co.uk. I recommend this for a review of Visual Basic. Now, in our discussion, they mentioned cells collection, so let's look at that also. So, cells are a type of are a collection, and not surprisingly, it's a collection of cells, a collection of cell objects in a table column, table row, selection, or range. So if you selected a row, or if you select a column, or if you refer to a column, or if you refer to a row, or just anything that you have selected, they can form a cells collection. Now remember here that we have this workbook, that's our workbook and our sheet, and it's the summary sheet, and that's an object in VBA, and that has a cells property here, has a cells property. So here it says use the cells property to return the cells collection. So you can refer to a certain collection of cells by using the cells property, and that's what they're doing here. They're referring to a collection of cells. So I believe, although he didn't say this, rows.count must stand for the number of rows. This one stands for the number of rows, and this is the first the first column. So in other words, what we're getting is here we're getting well, I didn't explain this, but so cells is a collection, and it's a collection of cells. So we have a big collection of cells. Now if we put in, how many arguments are we putting in here? How many arguments are we putting into this, inside these parentheses here? Well, there's a comma here, right? There's one comma. That means we're putting in 2. Can I do this? 1, 2 arguments, because there's a comma, so that's space for 2 arguments. So the first argument tells, since this is a collection of cells, it tells the row. It doesn't matter that I'm writing rows.count, I'm not talking about that. Just the first argument, whatever you put to the left of the comma, is going to tell you the row number of the cell that you're talking about in this cells collection. And the second argument, which is the thing to the right of the comma, tells you the column. So it doesn't matter that this says rows count. That's just, I mean, that's there for a different reason. But whatever is here tells you the row number that you want from your collection of cells, and whatever here is here tells you the column number. So we're going to get the first column, so we're only working with the first column, and we're getting some, we're getting the last, let's see, am I right? I think so. So we're getting the last row in our set of cells, and the first column. So we're getting basically, I guess, I'm not sure actually. He hasn't quite told us what this is, but I believe this is the last cell in the whole sheet in the first column. And then remember, we're going, well, let's just see about this. I don't think he's told us what that is yet. Okay, let's look at this. I looked up rows count, and rows count is the number of rows in the worksheet. So, and thereby also the row number of the very last row in the worksheet. So if it's 2000 up to 2003, it was only this many. But in these are much bigger. You have many more rows in the newer versions of Excel. So also, let's just read this. So dot cells is the collection of cells of that worksheet. So it's the entire collection of cells in the worksheet. Okay? So it's not just so if you just have it the way we have it, it means the entire collection. And you can refer to a particular cell like this. So like I said, you put the row number in and the column number, and that allows you to put in that allows you to identify a particular cell. You just indicate its row and column. So let's see, going back to here, this refers to the entire collection of all the cells in the summary sheet. But this is the very last row. So remember, they said it could be like, what was it? Could be this number, but it's probably not, because you're probably not using this version of Excel. You're using one of these versions, right? So it's probably this, actually. So the last row would be this row. So that's the last row and the first column. So this is the very bottom left cell in the worksheet. And then we do the end x up, x1 up. Okay, and that takes you to the top. Okay? So you can go back and look at this. Might be interesting. Like, for example, if we said cells are the collection, so we have a cell rows, first row, cells count will tell you how many are in that selection. So you say the following example returns the number of cells in the current row. So to get one of the cells in a cell collection, we said you can do it like this with 2 arguments because there's a comma here, or you can do it with a single number, and that I'm not quite sure how it organizes this, but it's just like the first cell in the collection, the second cell in the collection, and so on. But I'm not quite sure how it counts. Does it count going down first and then over and then down and over, or does it go over and then down? I'm not sure. Okay, so that was a little bit of an aside, but that should help you to understand this code even a little bit better. Okay, so we did this. Then all I have to do is get the row where the non-empty cell is found, add 1 to the row number, and I have the row number that I need to write into next. The result is assigned to the variable next row. Okay, so we did that. We'll come back to this in the next video.